going to present to you now in this graph my opinion of what has happened to breastfeeding in our country over the last 100 years. So again, this is my opinion. Okay, so let's just take a historical look at feeding in the United States. If you were to look at what babies were feeding in 1900, the breastfeeding rate in the United States was about 99.7%. There were only about 0.3% of mothers and babies that weren't being breastfed, because if you had a baby in 1900 and the mother died at birth and she didn't have a wet nurse, the baby would die. There was no alternative food source. So if the mother wasn't able to do it or you didn't have a wet nurse, you were in big trouble. So everybody was breastfeeding in 1900. So then what happened, there was a small cohort of babies that did need an alternative food source. And so infant formula was invented right here. And it was a good thing for 0.3% of the population of babies. But what happened over the next 100 years was that two things happened. Number one, they found out that it was a pretty profitable business to be in, this baby formula industry. It was pretty profitable. And they also found out that the more that they marketed it, the more they made. So it kept building on itself. So today we find ourselves that around the world there's about $6 billion worth of infant formula that's sold around the world, and $4 billion of that is sold in the United States. $4 billion industry. So this is a big corporate industry, and they are extremely good at what they do. They answer to their stockholders, and they do a really good job. They make money every year, and you have to credit them. They're good at what they do. Big industry, $4 billion bucks. So that's the first thing that happened. The second thing that happened right about here, right about 1930, was that the medical community discovered this thing called germs and bacteria. And they decided that there was a particular group in our society that needed to be protected from this thing called germs and bacteria. And those were brand new babies. And they decided that hospitals, when they were built now, because babies were going into hospitals, hospitals were going to need to build these boxes called nurseries. And there were going to be standing rules in hospitals that babies needed to go to nurseries for a certain amount of time. Now, unless your breast and nipple is 85 yards long and can go under doors and over things, you can't breastfeed your baby if the baby's in a newborn nursery. So this term newborn nursery is an oxymoron that I hate. A newborn well baby should be with their mother. They should not be in this box. Because in the box you have harried nurses and doctors, and if a baby's crying you can only do two things. Give the baby a pacifier or give the baby some formula. That's the only thing that you can do in the box for a well baby. The box is really for sick babies or if the mom is sick. But well babies should not be going into the box. But we have a box in our hospital today, and we have the state of Massachusetts has had specific regulations that says, Dr. Philipp, for your box, which I'm in charge of our box at our hospital, you have to have one of your windows, one of your walls that has only windows. The idea being so families can come, because we know your baby's going to be in the box, and can look in and see their baby. So we have our nursery, if you were to come see, one side is all windows. And then secondly, it looks like a big gymnasium with no one there, because the state of Massachusetts has regulations that says you have 16 beds out on your maternity floor, then you need 16 bassinets in that area, and you need the square footage around those bassinets to accommodate 16. We don't ever have anybody in our box. It's this big, huge gymnasium. We could hold a square dance in there. There's nobody in there, but we have to have it with the square footage set up. And that stems from 1930. That's just a health care situation here. Okay, so the next thing that happened was the American Academy of Pediatrics was formed in like the 1930s or 40s. I'm not exactly sure when. One of the first things that the pediatricians in our country came out and said was schedules. Schedules. Babies eat every 3 hours. This is what they eat. Do not feed them. Do not give in to that crying. So we now know that babies don't feed on schedules. They feed on demand. So the AAP had their hand in this. And then this is what happened after World War II. One of the major things after the World War was women joined the workforce. And we know that if you want to breastfeed and you're working, forget about it. As we heard last night, you go to the bathroom to pump. And you were lucky that you had time given to you to go, or you could find the time. But most women don't. So, you know, I always say I don't make my lunch in the bathroom, and I don't think we should be making our baby's lunch in the bathroom. So, okay, so this is what then happens to breastfeeding rates around the United States due to, I believe, these things. This is what happens. That's breastfeeding rates. To the point that right here we reached our all-time low, 1972, right here, 1972. There were, if I were to give you the statistics, 22% of women were giving any amount of breast milk when they left the hospital setting. So our breastfeeding rate for all women was 22%. It was so low that in this period of time, right here, and people in this room may speak to this, that if you went to a hospital, there were standing orders in the hospital set. Admit the mother, bathe the mother, do this, and give the mother a shot of bromocriptine. Bromocriptine dries up milk because the healthcare community viewed milk. They knew it was coming. Nobody was using it, and it was a major pain in the neck for the healthcare community. So there were standing orders in hospitals to give shots of bromocriptine. So that was the story with breastfeeding rates in our country. They just plummeted. This march with breastfeeding rates going down, down, down was led by someone like my mother. Educated, becoming affluent, and the sign of success right around in here, right around when I was born, was that you would move to the suburbs, you would buy your single family home, get your white picket fence, your lawnmower, your garbage disposal, and your baby bottle sterilizer. That was a sign in America that you were making it, that you were affluent. What happened next was, thank God for some people, otherwise we wouldn't know, we had no babies breastfeeding in our country. Basically, I think that La Leche League and lay organizations saved the day. And that's why La Leche League is so, they seem to some people to be violent in the reaction. I think it's because they've had to push so hard to save something. So thanks to certain groups, rates started to go back up, and this was led like La Leche League groups, lay organizations like AABA, Back to Earth, Hippie, Greenpeace. Some women said, oh my gosh, first of all, I'm not even going in those hospitals because they're so bad. They're even trying to dry up my milk. So that was one way to fight it. Say, I won't even go into the hospital. The second way was to say, I'm going to have my baby and I'm getting out of Dodge really fast because Dodge is really bad. They do so many things that obstruct breastfeeding. So rates started to climb back up here. But here is what happened. Our poor minority sisters, their rates are stuck here. We're not exactly sure why. But I will tell you, in our hospital, we have a great many of moms who are immigrants just coming to the United States right off. So I'll go into a room and the mom will be from, let's say, pick a country, Jamaica. I had a mom this week from Jamaica. And she would tell me, I'd really like a bottle for my baby. And I would talk to her, and I can see she wants to be like the rich Americans. And she knows that the rich Americans breastfeed. And we'll start joking about it, and I'll say, but Mrs. Jones, you know, everybody in Jamaica breastfeeds, don't they? She goes, yeah. I said, let's just pretend room 501 is Jamaica, okay? And we're going to just breastfeed here because you have totally enough. We don't need those bottles. Okay, so then two consequences come of this. When you have a country that has no one who's breastfeeding, you get someone like me who trains at Ivy League schools without a minute of breastfeeding talk, education, zippo, none. And then I pop out from my training, I'm supposed to be the expert. I didn't know what I was talking about. I look back now, I feel so badly because I didn't know what I was talking about. So you end up here, you have lost an entire 2 generations of support. You've lost the grandmother, you've lost the best friend. You've lost the support system for women when if they can get out of the hospital breastfeeding and they're trying to keep going. You've lost the support system in our country. And then you have lost the doctors and the nurses. You've lost them. They don't know what they're talking about. And that's my claim to fame, is I'm a pediatrician who knows about breastfeeding. And doctors don't like to be humiliated and have someone point to them and go, I can't believe you're a doctor and you don't know about that. So I get to go to closed door meetings with my colleagues where they can raise their hand and ask the most basic, stupidest question that a medical student would know. I'll give you an example. How much weight loss should a baby have after they're born? It's the most basic of questions. They don't even know the answer. They don't know. They were never trained. There's nothing written on it, and anything that's written is wrong. So anything they're reading, the medical journals, the medical books, the old textbooks are wrong.